West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, and with me as ever is my partner in crime, Father Santokie. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, Mash. Tears in my eyes, you know. West Indies following iconic moral victory in Sri Lanka. We've managed to secure an actual victory, ODI series victory, against the old enemy, England. Yesterday at the Mecca of cricket at the Kensington Oval, West Indies won by 8 wickets. A rare occasion as well. We saw 2 players hit a century, which we'll get onto. But Mash, it's only right, you know, the big talking point, which got, you know, headlines across the world. We're going to start there, you know, CCP, we always got to do it. Alzarri Joseph. So for those of you who didn't watch the match, there was some drama involving Alzarri Joseph at the beginning of the match when he was bowling. It looked like he had heated discussions with Captain Shea Hope about fielding placements. He clearly wasn't happy with what was going on. Bowled a few deliveries, actually got a wicket as well. I think it was Cox from England. He got a wicket, still wasn't happy, didn't celebrate that wicket. At that point, Darren Sammy, head coach, was on the boundary rope, gesturing to Alzarri Joseph. And then, you know, in the culmination of it all, he stormed off the field at the end of his over, just walked up, ran off the steps. He was sitting, we saw him sitting in the dugout. He was not happy. Mash, you know, I'm a father at the moment. I'm sleep deprived. You know, I haven't been able to process this. Talk to me, Mash. What's going on?
Do you know what, Santokie? So I've spent quite a bit of time today trying to just get my head round it, because I think there was, on some levels, I think there was an immediate urge in some quarters, without calling names, to not excuse it, but certainly to try and downplay it, right? And as I was watching it live and kind of letting it marinate in my head, I was just thinking, yeah, but this is a thing that I kept returning to every single time, whether last night or today. The thing I kept returning to was, yeah, but he's the vice captain. Not that it would have been more acceptable if it was a player who wasn't the vice captain or captain or whatever, but it's all about leadership, right? And it's about responsibility, and it's about setting an example. And no matter how anybody tries to explain it to me and word it to me, that was a failure of leadership. Not by Shea, but by Alzarri. Whether he was angry with Shea or not is irrelevant to me. This is a global game. There's multiple cameras on you, right? This is being beamed all around the world for those who wanted to watch the game, right? And that's how you're getting on. That's how you're getting on. Clearly defying the captain, walking yourself off the pitch. Walking yourself off the pitch like this is in high school. Like this is some high school game and you're the big star in high school, and essentially everybody bows down to you and no one can chat to you and no one can say anything. So you're just going to walk off because you know you're going to get forgiven anyways, right? So all of that was swirling around my head. And then I'm going to say this as well, Santokie, because at one point today I started saying, if I know we're going to record something tonight, and there's going to be somebody who gets in the comments and go, but Mash, you're a hypocrite because you defended Chris Gale, you defended Pollard, you defended DJ Bravo. None of them men walked off the pitch. But even if I accept that point, when people like Gale spoke out publicly, right, against whether West Indies administration or Bravo did what he did in India, it was widely accepted, apart from colonial uncles. It was widely accepted that West Indies administration was being run like a fiefdom, and the players were being treated like they were chattel slaves and whatever. So when certain individuals had the guts in West Indies cricket, like a DJ Bravo and a Chris Gale, to speak up and then got blackballed in West Indies cricket, I said they did the right thing. I'll hold my hands up and say that they did the right thing. Now, people could turn around to me and say, oh, but Mash, that's the same level of disrespect, but in a different way. That was a different era in a period of West Indies cricket where it was very much administration versus players. Alzarri don't have that excuse. This ain't an environment where the players are getting a fight down and that's why their backs are up and so on and so forth. And if I'm gonna be honest as well, Santokie, because we can properly get into this. This is the other thing, and I hope Alzarri listens to this part. The Vex face thing that's played out. That's played out. We're tired of the Vex face. We're tired of it now. Obviously, everybody can do their own thing, right? But Alzarri's had the Vex face since he was 19 years old. You're a big man now, you know. Alzarri's been in international cricket for 8+ years, and you're still doing the Vex face thing. Come on, man.
Yeah,
Come on, man. Allow it, Alzarri.
Mash been waiting time, you know, to get that.
I've been waiting. Nah, I had to get that one off my chest, guys.
But yeah, I think you're completely right, Mash. I think in regards to like DJ Bravo and the India thing, that was a collective disagreement with an authority figure. So it made sense, and it had the backing of the players, which is why when Bravo did his speech at the toss to say they weren't going to play, the players all stood behind him to show like solidarity. Whereas this, I think Darren Sammy highlighted it post-match. You know, it goes against the culture he's trying to build. It doesn't make sense. You know, you can all galvanize yourself to have beef with a higher figure or authority figure, but the unwritten rule in sports is your teammates. You don't do that. Basically, you don't, especially in a public forum. You might do it in the changing rooms to iron it out, but in a public forum, you know, big match like you said, international match, the world's watching. And to do it like that early on as well in the innings, it wasn't even if it was like the death overs. And
Three overs. 3 overs. We'd only just started the match.
And the thing is, you know what? We've seen it numerous times before, you know, like for different teams, not just West Indies, you know, disagreements on the field might happen. But for Darren Sammy to kind of come to the boundary rope and try to calm things down, and Alzarri still have time to process all of that, bowl the 4 overs, and then still think, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to walk off, like, I had enough. It's absolute madness. And you know what?
Remember, Santokie, hold on. Before you continue, remember, when he walked off, he wasn't allowed to be, Hayden Walsh wasn't allowed to get subbed on. So we did a full over with one man off the pitch, like he'd been sent off, cuz.
Can you imagine if like Phil Salt just hit like 36 off the next over or something? Like, it's actually absolute madness. So, and I think what I was saying was, I think it was just the fact that, you know, he decided to do that, and it kind of sums up West Indies cricket in a microcosm, because whilst we got this great win, we took the series win, generally people outside the region, international headlines are all talking about the Alzarri drama, because, you know, it's clickbait, it gets the headlines, it's gossip, it's drama. It goes back to the whole, you know, chaos at West Indies, these guys don't have any discipline kind of thing. So that, for me, it sums up West Indies cricket in a nutshell. Never a dull day, Mash. When we get one positive, there's always a negative to balance it out.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other question, and actually, even before I get to that point, even when Alzarri came back on the pitch, I don't know how many people really paid attention to this part, but when he came back on the pitch, he was still wanting to finger point and get on bad with Shea. And I think Brandon King and Romario Shepherd had to kind of be like, move, man. Like, what you doing? Go on.
I think the thing that, just to touch on it, I think the thing that makes it worse if Pollard's captain or something, you know, someone who kind of is like, has a personality where he'd kind of not be confrontational, but at least kind of maybe give it back. I think because Hope is such a calm guy and like such a relaxed guy, it made it seem even worse. Like, it was out of context, because it was like, you're coming back onto the field, the matter's done, and you're still trying to point finger at him. And Hope, to his credit, didn't react. He kind of kept composed, and that kind of shows credibility as to why Hope is the captain, because that's sort of the skill set you need from Hope, contrasting to, as you say, the vice captain Alzarri.
What was interesting is that at the end of the game, Nikhil asked Shea something about it, and Shea's response was no comment. And I found that quite telling, because if it was all kind of like, you know, that's all water under the bridge and Shea would have said, or should have said, something along the lines of, listen, in competition sometimes emotions ride high. Alzarri was just caught up in the emotion of the moment, but we've spoken about it. It's all forgiven. We move on. If Shea had said something like that, I'd be saying to you now, you know what, Santokie, it was bad, but clearly they've already addressed it. For the captain to say at the end of play, no comment, means there's a disciplinary coming. And so the next question we have to ask ourselves, and even Sammy, like you've alluded to Sammy saying at the end of the game, it's unacceptable. That's strong words, you know. So the captain says no comment, and the head coach says unacceptable. It goes against team culture. So the next question we have to ask ourselves, Santokie, is, I guess first, should there be a punishment, and what is an appropriate punishment? I'm happy to go first.
Yeah,
I
go
think
on.
yes. I
Go on.
think yes, there has to be a punishment, and I think the appropriate punishment should be one: he loses the vice captaincy immediately. You're done out here. No more leadership responsibility. I don't want to hear nothing about we've all spoken and Alzarri has apologized to the team and we go back to business as usual. You're done out here. Because I was thinking about it with my like teacher's hat on.
Yeah.
Like, how would you deal with this if this happened at school? You like if that was a prefect, tie's gone. You're done out here, right? You've let down the culture of what this organization is about. Done out here. And then this is what I'd do. You can call me draconian, but I'd say to him, you know what? You see the T20 series coming up against England. Go home, innit? Go home. No, I'm serious. I'd tell him big and strong. I'd say go home. Fly back to Antigua. We'll pick you again for Bangladesh. But you know what? You need to take your stink attitude out of this squad. Go home and cool off. That's what I'd do.
Yeah.
Personally. But I'd let him know you're coming back to the squad for Bangladesh, but you have to go home now. You can't be around here with your stink attitude. That's what I'd say.
I think definitely it would be strange if he suddenly played the T20 series without any sort of repercussion, because I think, like you said, the fact that Hope publicly said no comment, Sammy chose to say, I mean, because West Indies won, it would have been easy to brush it under the carpet, but the fact that Sammy said it's unacceptable means, like you said, I think there's a disciplinary looming. I don't think it's deep enough to say, all right, cool, you're out the side for a given time. I think, like you said perfectly, go home to Antigua, cool off, come back, we'll patch things out, and you'll be in the Bangladesh series, because we've also got to be realistic. We haven't got many strike bowlers.
Let's be real here. He can't go for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, I'd imagine he'd probably be asked to not be asked, but he'd probably hopefully volunteer to like give a sort of apology or something to the team and Hope in particular, because like you said, if it was, I'm just saying off the top of my head, if it was like a Jaden Seals or a Matthew Ford who done it, you could maybe say, all right, cool, they're young guys, and this is the emotions got the better of them. Let's work out. But Alzarri Joseph, he's been in the game for 10 years, international game. He's the vice captain. He's meant to be the guy who, if someone does that, he's pulling them back in and trying to control things. He can't be the guy storming off. So, like you said, I think the vice captaincy is done out, because for the players' perspectives, how can you respect someone as a vice captain when man abandoned ship? man, who bowled the next over? Was it Ford? Man, like Ford.
No, Romario. No, because Romario bowled the next over and got a wicket.
Yeah.
So that was the joke of the whole thing. Romario got called into the attack early, got a wicket. In fact, did you even see the part? Because in that same over when he was cussing out Hope, he took the wicket of Jordan Cox, and walked straight back to his mark, refused to celebrate with the team, and just walked straight back to his mark to bowl the next ball. And I was watching it going, what type of is this? Like,
I would love to know. Like, the players must have, because obviously cricket, you don't all kind of congregate together. So the players are all standing there isolated. They must have been thinking, what the hell's going on here? Like,
listen,
Alzarri just walked off.
He's lucky. I said in the Discord group, I said he's lucky that Hope's not a Jamaican, because a Jamaican captain might all have told him about. Yeah. Anyways, let me just. He's lucky the captain's a calm guy, because that's where your point is right. That a more combative captain may well have started cussing back and saying, "What do you think this is?"
I just big mecca of cricket as well, in Hope's home ground.
Yeah.
Hope's home ground, he got disrespected like that. This is actually madness. But like we said, never a dull day in West Indies cricket. Mash, let's move on to the actual result, because like we said, it's a shame that, I wouldn't say overshadowed, but it's left the sort of stain on it that this sort of happened. But at the end of the day, West Indies won by 8 wickets. England scored 263 in their innings. It was a slow pitch, and obviously there's been a lot of talk in the English media about the inexperience of this England side. However, you can only beat who's in front of you, so we can't use that against West Indies' case. It was a good victory. 263 for 8. England at one point they were 24 for 4, and they kind of rallied back with Sam Curran, Dan Mosley, Joffa Archer as well on his home ground as well, bashing a few runs. 263, I thought, Mash, would be a very tricky chase for West Indies, because the pitch looked slow. From where England had been and recovered, it could have been, and we know what West Indies batting, how fragile it can be. However, Brandon King and Kacey Carty, I'm going to give you your flowers, Mash, because you're someone who's talked about Kacey Carty for the longest time. ODI cricket, he seems to have found a groove, culminating in his maiden century, 128 off 114. Took West Indies over the line by 8 wickets and, get a vital series win. I don't know how important that will be in the long run in terms of ranking points. We may already be out of the race for qualification, but at this point, you've got to take what you can. So again, it gives us ranking points. So a big win, big series win, big morale booster after the Sri Lanka loss. But so Mash, let's get into it. Let's talk about firstly, Common, because you've been a big advocate of him, Kacey Carty.
Yeah, so Kacey Carty's now played 28 ODI matches and he currently averages 42. Obviously, that was his first century. He's got 450s. I think his average is 42, but obviously that big 128 was unbeaten, so that helps put his average up. So maybe in truth, he's averaging somewhere, when you take out the not out context, he's probably averaging somewhere in the 37, 36. But in the context of the down bad era, that's as good as it gets. And actually, what I would say for Kacey is, one, he comes from one of the smallest regions within the Caribbean. So big him up on that level, first things first. It's hard to make it, even from where he is, to then get into the leewards, to then get into the West Indies. So you've got to be congratulated and respected on that front, first and foremost. And what I like about Kacey Carty is, and I think he represents an exemplar for every other Ute man in the region to try and follow. Kacey's not the most expansive of players. He's not the most pleasing on the eye of players. He reminds me a bit of like Kavem Hodge in Test cricket, where it's like, listen, this is my skill set, and I'm gonna make the most of this particular skill set that I've got. I'm not Shea Hope. I don't play the prettiest cover drives like a Shea Hope or a Brandon King. I can't destroy any bowler I come across like Nicholas Pooran. I'm not destructive like Evan Lewis, but I know my game. And I'm going to play my game. And you have to just respect that. So the players like your kind of like Alec Athanasis, for example, and this isn't about, there's no critique of Alec, but it's about players like Alec need to look at someone like Kacey and go, that's what I need to aspire to. Aesthetically, Alec Athanasis is a better player than Kacey Carty. But Kacey Carty is currently averaging in the 40s. Do you see what I mean? So it's all about knowing your game and playing within the limitations of that particular game, and therefore you if you can do that, you maximize your ability. Kacey will struggle at some point, because all cricketers do, but what he's shown as well, which we have to respect, is he's progressively getting better. Because remember, the criticism of him in the early piece of his international debut was he don't strike at a good enough strike rate, similar to Shea Hope. Obviously, I'm not saying that Kacey Carty is going to hit 17 ODI 100s, but similar to Shea Hope, it was like, okay, yeah, Kacey can play innings, but he's striking at like 68 strike rate in ODIs, throwback. And we're like, that's too slow. But, this was his first major innings where it's not that he just scored 128, Santokie, he did it off 117 balls or something. So he's showing that his game is also getting better. He's not always going to go at over 100 of a strike rate, but what we can answer is that his game slowly but surely improves, and I think we can say that that's what he's doing, to the point where, Santokie, check this out. This is where you come in now for me. Right now, if Nicholas Pooran said I'm available, obviously I'm getting him into the team no matter what, but arguably, you could look at Pooran and go, sorry, bro, there's no spot for you right now. Arguably, obviously, I'd force him in, but arguably, and that I think that speaks to, and the reason why I'm saying this in the context of Carty is it speaks to how comfortable Carty's position is, because you would never drop Carty for Pooran. And how many people would say that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I think firstly, I think you summed it up well. Like Carty, he may not be as naturally talented as a lot of batters in the region, but he maximizes what he does have. And as you said, we're seeing there's a trajectory at the moment, an upwards one, which is refreshing to see, because often in West Indies cricket, we see a downwards one. So it's good to see him work on his game, obviously improving. And like you said, he cemented his place in the ODI side, as has Shafane Rutherford, purely based on his recent performances. So there, you've immediately got 2 middle order spots filled up, and obviously Hope as well. So yeah, there's an argument that, Pooran, he will walk into the side because he's Nicholas Pooran, and we know what Pooran can do in 50 overs. But there's an argument to make that, technically it's not a given. Like there's competition, but it's healthy. And I think it's valid what you tweeted on our handle earlier today. Because there's often arguments about, in and out. So if Puran comes in, who's coming out? Who's going to get the drop? But like you said, it's about building a squad, a 15-man squad that we can sort of utilize. So it's not a case of one in, one out. It's like, how do we have the depth and build a group? Because it's going to be a very rare occasion when all players are fit and all players are available. So how do you build that depth, especially with cricket being unusual in terms of conditions? Subcontinent conditions are so different from Australia, for instance. So you might play a Austin Chase in the Caribbean, whereas a Jason Holder would be better in South Africa, for instance. Like those kind of things. So it's always good to have group and depth. So it's very welcome that we are seeing the likes of Carty and Rutherford kind of step up, because for the longest time in the ODI format, we've been threadbare. We've just had to go with whoever is available, and we barely had a strong 11. So now we're starting to see some depth. And the only thing as West Indies fans we can hope for is Nicholas Pooran coming back to the setup next year. Might be optimistic, but you never know. If we keep seeing positive results and a team culture building, he might want to be a part of that.
Speaking about that depth, actually, so, and hopefully coming off what you just said there, Darren Sammy looks at the squad at the end of this ODI series. I hope that Sammy looks at that and goes, these are the guys I'm going forward with. Because that's what we've been asking for. We've got to be able to establish who's our core. He could arguably look at our top 6 with Hetty in it at 6 and say, that's my core. That's my core. Now let me build the bench strength off the back of that core, right? So someone like Justin Graves, who's obviously scored 3 back-to-back centuries in Super 50, and then I think he got 27 versus Guyana the other day. Up until so this is the next talking point, Santokie. Up until yesterday, pretty much everyone would have said, well, Graves obviously opens versus Bangladesh then, but Brandon King obviously hit a century. Now, that's no bad thing, because good for Brandon King, really happy for him. He's a classy player, needed that knock, needed it to be against a proper full member side as well to kind of fight off the allegations that he only scores against kind of the weaker teams, and needed it now because of what Graves is doing. I don't see that as any bad thing that he's only scored now when Graves is putting him under pressure, because that's the point. He needs to be under pressure. He can't. Brandon, respectfully to Brandon, can't be assured of his spot. No player should be assured of their spot except Shea Hope, really and truly, right? And maybe King Multi. No one should really be assured of their spot. So people shouldn't look at it as, that knock from King now keeps Graves out the side. Instead, they should be looking at it as, so Graves is now the backup, which is good. Like, you want your backup, your bench strength, to be putting up the numbers to put pressure on the ones who are probably first choice.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because now we're going to have the ironic situation where, do you remember when Graves made was it against Ireland when we played in Jamaica?
Yeah, made his debut and looked absolutely
out of nowhere, Graves got picked and he averaged about 7. And everyone was like, how did this guy call up? Why did he get called up? And now we're probably in a scenario where he's going to top score in Super 50 and not make the first 11 because of King and Lewis's form. But as we all said, testing that depth is good. Having Graves as a backup keeps King and Lewis on their toes, because they know there's someone in form who's behind them. So it'd be interesting to see how that dynamic goes, because now Carl Mayers has dropped out of the West Indies setup. We don't have that sort of competition for opening spots, and which is why we had to resort to Otley earlier in the year. So in comparison to that state where we're calling up Otley to open against Australia, it's good that we have that option. And, Graves will be hungry to kind of take that spot, because he's piled on runs in Super 50. I think from a cricket West Indies point of view, because of what happened with Darren Bravo, infamously, the runs he scored and not getting picked, I think Graves will have to make the squad for Bangladesh, assuming he's the top scorer, just because of the optics alone. I mean, he's deserving of it, but the optics as well means that he'll get a call up. And if, like you said, King, it was great he got a century, welcome century, but he's been inconsistent. So he'll need to keep that consistency up to keep his place. And having Graves on the bench there will be a reminder for him. So good signs there in terms of the opening positions. And like you said, in this ODI side, other than Hope and Moti, no one really, I mean, Carty and Rutherford are coming into it, but Hope and Moti are the two sort of backbone of the side, the two who are the guaranteed first names to be picked. So, there's always availability in this side going forward. But it is good, after the down bad of World Cup qualifiers, we're continuing to see some sort of upward trajectory with Sammy, because I feel like last year was when he got the results. But this year he's getting the results, but we're also seeing players like Carty and Rutherford, younger guys,
kick on. People
developing into it. And that's what you want to see, because that means by the time we get to the World Cup qualifiers in 2026, hopefully we know our squad. We won't have players who, are verging on retirement. We got a good core of younger players, and we'll be ready.
Let's talk about Shafane Rutherford, not with the bat, with the ball. which is I feel sorry for him. So obviously, Romario Shepherd got injured, got cramps, or bust up his toe or something,
Yeah.
and went off when he had 4 overs left to bowl. So that because West Indies had gone into the game with a 5-bowler strategy, which had seen them lose the game, game number 2 with the 5-bowler strategy, it meant that someone had to fill up the 4 overs from Romario Shepherd. They had no option other than Shafane Rutherford. He got clarted for like, was it 50 something? I don't even know. It was,
57.
I think it was it 57?
Yeah.
4, 4 overs, number 57. But that's not Shafane Rutherford. That's not Shafane Rutherford's fault. Whoever got put in that position was in a hide into nothing because there was no, not even part-time bowler, because that's what Shafane Rutherford is. There was no genuine 6th bowler. Now, here's my thing, and I'm going to, even though we won, and even though King and Carty chased it down, I am not going to fall into the trap of saying, oh, so that proves that West Indies only need 5 bowlers. No, I don't think, Santokie, with respect to West Indies, that we can compete on a consistent basis with only 5 bowlers. Because the law of averages in the down bad era says that someone... says that one of our frontline bowlers is going to get absolutely clarted in every match, right? So if we have no one to turn to, that means the balance of the side is out of kilter. So it's a good problem to have, but I just wonder how much Sammy and his backroom staff are looking at the construction of the team and going, okay, good, we got a core of 6, and we got a core 5 bowlers, Chaser Multi are the spinners, and anyone from the 3 of the pacers or whatever it might be, but we don't have a genuine 6th bowler. And I don't know how they solve that, Santokie, because really and truly, the 6th bowler should be Chase, really and truly. But then to make that happen, someone's got to come out who probably shouldn't be coming out from the top 6. And this is before we talk about Puran possibly coming back. Do you see what I mean? So it's not actually an easy conundrum to solve, but we do need a 6th bowler.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, Chase should be the 6th bowler who comes in to sort of plug the gaps rather than, one of the 5. And it's a problem with West Indies cricket. We've tried to cover up our deficiencies with strike bowlers by having all-rounders in the side, but it means you haven't really got that frontline attack. I think Sammy's tried to kind of blood Jaden Seals in as well, with the idea that, you'll have Ford, Alzarri, Jaden Seals. At least you've got 3 pacers who can do that. Seals obviously hasn't found his rhythm in ODI cricket yet, but hopefully that will come. And Moti, like you said, is with law of averages in a down bad era. Like Romario Shepherd, he'll have one game where he looks like Mitchell Stark. Like you're like, this guy is the guy. And then the next 4 are just down bad, awful. And so it's trying to get that consistency. Moti's the most consistent bowler we have at the moment. And that's why we've named him the King Moti. So he's generally the only consistent one. Alzarri and Ford, they take wickets, but again, they can go for a lot of runs. So it's about building that consistency. But I agree, Mash. I don't think Rutherford shouldn't be a 6th bowler at all. There's no way Rutherford should be the 6th bowler in this ODI side. I think you let him focus on batting. And if there's absolute wild scenario, you maybe get him to bowl 1 over for something. But Rutherford shouldn't be coming in as a 6th bowler. So it's about that. But the thing is, since the podcast has started, Mash, we've always talked about white ball strike bowlers and the lack of it.
Yeah.
So the problem is, if you're looking at Super 50, no one's really stood out at the moment. Seems to be spin-friendly pitches as usual. There's not really any strike bowlers emerging. I know a lot of people say maybe someone like Anderson Phillip, Akeem Jordan, but they're really guys who are specialised in red ball in recent years. So it's hard to know whether they can make the adjustment to 50 over cricket ODI setup because they haven't performed either in Super 50. So it's going to be really hard. I think it's going to always be a case of us just trying to fit in all-rounders into those bowling positions for the foreseeable future.
So what about if Puran became an all-rounder? Remember that series versus Pakistan when man bowled 10 overs and took 4 wickets? So I don't know, maybe Puran has to come back and be our 6th bowler. Maybe that's how we get him back in the team, because I don't know how else they're gonna do it. But ultimately, actually, I actually genuinely think that part of I think you've hit the nail on the head, that the issue here isn't really finding the all-rounder in the top 6 per se. The issue is that the strike bowling is so inconsistent Like if our strike bowling was consistent or relatively consistent, I'd say, you know what, go with the 5 bowler strategy and Shafane Rutherford then. But you know that it's majorly inconsistent. So how?
And if you
I
think
don't know.
remember Phil Simmons, like Phil Simmons had the same problem. Remember when we tried Kimar Roach? Was it 2022? Maybe one of the we tried Kimar Roach in 50
Came back
over
for a series, yeah.
Shannon Gabriel in the T20s. Even we tried Fidel Edwards when he was nearly 40. Like there's been Ravi Rampal there for the last 4 or 5 years. We've got the trend of trying to go back to players of yesteryear to try and fill the gap. But now those guys have retired. You don't even have that option anymore. So it's like, where are the future stars coming in? And I'm surprised on a regional level. This goes back to what we always mention about the lack of coherence between territories. There hasn't been a consistent plan to try and get strike bowlers in the region, young strike bowlers, develop them, because we're not seeing it. And it's been the case for the past 5-6 years at least. We've always had a problem, particularly in 50 over cricket, with being able to take wickets. And so it wouldn't surprise me, at the World Cup qualifiers, if we've still got, Alzarri, Romario as our 2 sort of main guys, no one's sort of coming through. And that's just where we are.
That's a good point. And actually this will sound harsh, what I'm saying about Romario Shepherd, because I actually like Romario Shepherd. It's taken me a long time to appreciate what Romario brings to the team, but I actually don't mind Romario Shepherd. But the thing is, Romario shouldn't be first choice.
Yeah.
As in, let me rephrase. That doesn't mean I don't mean he shouldn't be first choice. What I mean is, Romario effectively is treated like a strike bowler.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily his skill set. If you see where he should be like he almost should be like the 4th bowler in a competent bowling attack. He would be like the 2nd or 3rd change. Do you see where I'm coming from? He shouldn't actually be this is the main guy.
Yeah.
But it shows the lack of depth and options that we've got. Like Matthew Ford is currently looking like he's going to be a main guy, and he's played about 10 matches. But that again, Shamar Joseph has only played 2. So you can see that Sammy's looking desperately to try and find who are these strike bowlers that makes it easier to balance out the sides. But
yeah. But anyway, what we can do, we can celebrate. ODI series victory 3-2 against England. England have already got the excuses out, complaining about the lack of domestic 50 over cricket, which kind of also shows the disparity in cricket, because West Indies, we are Super 50s like 2 weeks, and that's most of the players don't play it anyway. Our regional season is usually around 5 games. So it speaks to a lot that England are blaming a lack of domestic games for their performances, when West Indies, this is what we always have to deal with year in, year out. So again, that shows the disparity. Like I said, people can make excuses, it wasn't the first choice team. At the end of the day, the standard of cricket most of these guys are playing is higher than what most of our guys are facing. So a big win for Sammy, continues that run in bilaterals, and we move on to the T20 series. Not seen a squad name yet though, Mash. We're about 48 hours from the first T20. No squad name yet. So
West Indies, know is that Sammy said some of the big names are coming back, so I think we can assume that the Purans and the Hussains may be coming back, for example.
Yeah, so we'll look forward to that. We'll probably do a review maybe after the weekend, first 2 T20s, and look at that, because we got the T20 World Cup coming up before the ODI World Cup qualifiers. So the T20s are arguably more important at the moment as well. So added context to that. And hopefully, like you said, we do see the big guns. Jason Holder's been in the studio in England analysing the games. Maybe he's coming for the T20s, Akil Hussain, Nicholas Pooran, you never know. So we'll keep an eye out for that and keep for the content. As always, like, follow, share, subscribe, Instagram, TikTok, X, Elon Musk, part of the new Trump government from what I'm hearing. Patreon, as if you could spare some money on our Patreon, donate. We always invest it back into the podcast, and Facebook as well. So that's been us on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Have a good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are listening to in the world, and we'll see you very soon.
West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.